Macy's has all of your Grill Master essentials for Father's Day. Stop by to get our hand-trimmed chicken breast and certified Angus beef patties that are ready to grill, so Dad can have his favorite dinner. Make sure to browse our bakery to find the perfect no-work Father's Day treat with our decadent peanut butter bars or famous donuts. Right now, you can get boneless beef ribeye steaks for $12.99 per pound at Macy's. Shop these Father's Day essentials in-store or online at Macys.com through June 18th. Macy's, happy shopping!
Don't necessarily use video as an ad hoc way to communicate. If you're truly going to invest in video, make it part of your strategy. And then in addition to that, make sure that you're incorporating that not just as part of your strategy, but in the tools that you're using every day. So if you're spending time in Yammer and Teams and SharePoint, if that's where your employees are going, that's where your videos should also be.
Welcome to the Intrazone, a show about the SharePoint Intelligent Intranet. I'm your host, Mark Cashman, here with my co-host today, Chris McNulty.
Hello, Mark.
It's basically giving you a front row for the Enterprise matinee that starts now.
Right now. You know, people have made a long career of being able to be color commentators for televised sports. Basically, you watch a play, the guy scores a home run, and there's someone who is extremely well paid who at the end of the home run says, "Yep, he just scored another home run." Like, how do you get that job? Well, the closest we can come to it is here in the Microsoft studios.
Correct. And if we can just get a little sound cue, that's the crowd. So obviously, you're going to have to imagine a lot of this, but the topic today is you're going to visualize your productivity. This is video in the enterprise. And today, guest segments, tell us a little bit about
Absolutely. Today, we're going to be talking with Vishal Sood and Christina Torok from the Microsoft Stream team. We'll also be talking to one of our customers, David Kaganovsky from Wavemaker, along with Susie Dean, our intranet partner from Add-in 365.
So that's a first for us to have a customer on the show, and it'll be really, really interesting to hear what David has to say about his experiences with our technology and working with Susie, our partner.
I'm really looking forward to it.
So the topic of this week certainly is video in the enterprise and how it integrates within our daily work habits. We know it's a very popular format, and we know that the Stream team, is working really hard to make that a tier 1 experience for people to create and consume. So we're going to dive into all things Stream, like you mentioned, with the Stream team, and see how they are inspiring people to connect with each other through intelligent video. Once we talk with the Stream team, we're going to then turn to talk to our customer Wavemaker and their partner Add-in 365, and we're going to dive into how they both planned and deployed their one-stop shop intranet site called WorkHub in Office 365.
And of course, we'll be going through our usual segments, our apps of the week, along with FAQs, and wrapping up by taking a look at some of the upcoming events across the team.
Video is here to stay, and it may have killed the radio star. Yes, Chris?
Are you doing... Okay. Background for those of you who were not here at the birth of MTV and video. The Buggles once recorded a song called Video Killed the Radio Star, which is the first song ever played on MTV. And I appreciate you're going back to the 80s, but I had to, A, represent the East Coast, and B, stick with the current century to call this episode TV on the Radio.
So let's jump to the century that we're currently in and really talk about where we're headed. We're going to be talking to the Microsoft Stream team and talk about how they're enabling this broad, secure employee engagement. It is really an evolution of what we're doing with everything enterprise video and how it integrates throughout the entire suite, throughout the full end-user experience.
You know, one of the things, I know we've worked on, a lot of our audience has participated in, is we structure these live broadcasts at least once a year. A couple of years ago, the future of SharePoint and what we did at the SharePoint conference. And these are highly orchestrated events with lots of planning that goes into it and the different Microsoft assets that go through. One thing, though, I really think we need to make sure our audience takes away from this is to demystify some of that. And absolutely, there's a place for all of that. But the technology has evolved to a point where everyone can not just find a video and see it on a mobile device, but help produce and share and create them in the first place. It's not something that needs to be reserved for the one-time-a-year large-budget production.
So you and I may pretend to know a little bit about video and radio, but maybe it's time to turn to some of the subject matter experts from both marketing and engineering. All right, it is time to get in the heads of our subject matter experts of Microsoft Stream. And nice to have in the studio here with Chris and I is Christina Torok from the marketing team focused on Microsoft Stream, and her counterpart on the engineering side of things, Vishal Sood. Thank you both for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yep, thanks for having us.
So first question to you all is, who are you? What do you do? How did you get here?
My name's Christina Torok, and I work on, as Mark said, on the Stream marketing team. And so we are part of the Office 365 organization. I've been in the technology space for a very long time, working with different organizations, and I ended up with Microsoft and in Office 365 because it's really aligned to what I enjoy doing in my career and what I'm good at, which is working with customers and products and really helping others to be successful with the kind of things that we're building together.
Well, I'd prefer to think you haven't ended up. I think you still have a lot more to do.
I ended up.
But it is great to have you here with us. Vishal, same question to you. How did you come to join this wonderful Microsoft world?
Yeah, so Microsoft, 15 years ago now. That's a long, long time ago.
Nice.
But it hasn't felt like that at all.
Yep.
In fact, I'll talk about, which is a more interesting story, is how I ended up in the video world. So about 11 years ago, I used to work on some server-side products. And then my boss came in and said, we have this product called Windows Media Services. Can you help us take care of that? And 11 years later, I'm still doing video. I was employee number 1 on the Azure Media Services team, started off Stream, and it's been a fascinating journey. I almost joke, it's like Hotel California. You can check out from this space, but you can never leave.
Cue the music. I love it.
And Christina, I know that I used to think I traveled a lot, but it seems every month you're in some other exotic destination having a conference I've never heard of to speak to people and speak to our customers about what they're doing with video. What are some of the things that they tell you are really important to them, about this as a content type?
So, there's a lot of different scenarios where the organizations are using video, but at the end of the day, I think it just comes down to really collaboration and communicating and how that's changed in our personal lives and now at work as well. So we have leaders and organizations that are trying to create these really personal relationships with employees they may have never met. Mm-hmm. So using video is an easy way to do that, and I think that's one of the reasons we're seeing customers start to adopt it so rapidly. It's just a better way to reach people and have these connections that you really don't necessarily establish via email.
How much of that do you think is generational? I know my kids live in YouTube, and I just use YouTube in my personal life. Do you think that that's also been part of the reason for the rise, or?
Sure, yeah. I think that we see a lot more people, millennials, that are comfortable with making videos. Mm-hmm. And so, 10 years ago, asking someone to step in front of a camera and talk about themselves or record something would have been, just end of the world, very scary.
Some days I'd like to ask my kids to not step in front of a camera and talk about themselves.
And the threshold, though, of people creating videos, or at least sharing videos, obviously is on the rise. Mm-hmm. Do you think it breaks that threshold of if you're comfortable creating a newsletter or a blog post or a something or other, having video be a part of that is what's on the rise as well? Just that it's a comfort zone. People, like you said, are willing to do it, but that it's also a really effective way to connect with people.
Yeah, it is. And I think, it just, like I said earlier, it kind of mimics what we're doing in our personal life. And I think as technology evolves in our personal lives as well, and people started, using social media, and now they're using video, and we see that all just come over into the workplace too. And so, yes, I absolutely think that video is going to continue to become more common, and people will be more comfortable with it.
So as much about, I think that's a really important point. It's people are just generating. It isn't just that they see it as authoritative and something that they consume, but that it's a participatory act for them.
Yeah.
Great.
So let's switch over, Vishal. We wanted to get a little bit of a history, not only where you came from, but where the product has been and where it's going. And recently, you all actually made a pretty big move just from where the engineering resources sit. You moved from Azure land into Office land, and you landed in a place where we call home for now for a while, under Jeff Teeper. And as corporate vice president of a lot of products, Office, SharePoint, and OneDrive, now Stream Engineering sits under Jeff. What does that mean, maybe for you, just in the real concise way, just how's the world in the new ways? But what does that actually mean for the product when you take Stream and move it closer to that productivity heartbeat?
Yep, that's a great question. And I'll actually continue from the previous question you had. So I think if you look at it, we use in our personalized video a lot nowadays. But at the same time, the transformative potential of video at work is enormous. It's not just entertainment. It's real productivity. It's real connectedness with my leaders. So it is a recognition of that. Stream has always been a part of Office. We have always shipped with Office. We're just formalizing that as an org structure now. So the idea here is, how can we really elevate video to be a core content type across all of Office? How can we build a true destination, a true muscle memory for where people at work can go and find what they're looking for, be more productive, be more engaged with their leadership, and leaders be more engaged with it. So it's all of that. So we formed a new group under Jeff Teeper, who you introduced earlier. So Chris Prattley, who's my new boss, he owns the Office Media Group. So we are elevating media as a content type in Office with this group. And it's a great.
And that's where I want to pause, because I think it's a great acronym. Office Media Group. Say it really slowly. OMG.
OMG FTW.
Well, I think what you're saying is 100% true. It's been what you all have been designing and building. And I think being less of a silo outside of that Office machine gives you a lot of credibility. It gives you a lot of, obviously, stake in building things in the right way. But I think you were already doing it. This just gives you a lot more access and the reins to do it.
Yep, and it gives more access. We're sitting closer to everybody else. Expect even more integrations in Office. We were already doing that, but just continue down that path and keep hammering on that. So
awesome. Well, I'd say keep going down that path, because I think the feedback that probably Christina sees more than I do is very positive and very much getting into I don't want to always go over to the portal and do X, Y, and Z. I want to do it right where I'm at, and more teams that you can connect with to convince them to bring in those experiences, a win.
And we say, take video to where people are. So that's kind of what we've done.
It's interesting, as much as we're taking, all the goodness of Stream and bringing it internally into the core of how we build Office. Christina, I think it would be interesting to talk a little bit about how we take, from a user perspective, if you think about that classic trinity of Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, and there's people who are deep specialists in each, but there's still a common thread of, at some point, everyone needs to write something. People need to calculate something. People need to present something. What do you see as the things that everyone is going to be able to do with video, or can actually already do with video? Not just the image specialist, but the most common things that get you really excited.
So I think that's a great point, what you said. Everyone's going to need to build a spreadsheet and add data. Everyone's going to want to build a PowerPoint to, tell a story.
Right.
So video is just kind of an extension of that, right? So we can look at it like two groups. We have the creators, so the people that are creating that spreadsheet, creating that PowerPoint, creating that video, and then the people that are consuming that content or learning from that content. And so I think that we'll begin to see more of our customers using some of the tools that we have in Office 365 to start creating these videos like they would a PowerPoint or an Excel spreadsheet, or even an email to some extent, just creating this content. And that I think is going to become more prevalent because we have so many tools in which you can use today to do that.
Right.
And that's also an investment area for Stream, is kind of that idea of how do we make it easy, not just for people to find and discover and interact with the content, but to also create it.
Can we talk a little bit more about what you mean by interact with the content?
Sure.
When I open up a Stream video, what can I do with it as a viewer of it to share my experience with others?
There's a couple different things we could talk about there. One is this sense of, and we recently released live events capability. And so that's kind of one example of how we are creating a place where people can create content easily and have the end users actually participate and feel like they're part of it. And a way that we do that today is the integration we have with Yammer enables everybody that's watching that event to actually be participating as well in the discussion, liking the video and being able to respond to things. And we've kind of seen that kind of interactivity and just engagement from the audience is really taking hold. People like that. And then, of course, Vishal might even have some other ideas to talk about too. But with interactivity in general, we will be seeing that come about more in video because we want to pull people in. We want them to feel like they're part of something, and that's kind of the value you get with video, right?
And let me share a kind of a story with you.
Sure.
It's kind of an interesting one. So we talked about PowerPoint and how you can publish videos from PowerPoint now. So I have this colleague who was kind of giving the same pitch to everybody over and over and over again. So he was like, here's a set of slides. And he eventually got bored of it. Then he said, let me just start sending my slides over. And what he realized is when he sent his slide over, people actually did not understand what he wanted to convey and had built their own understandings of what he was trying to say. But now, imagine him, right? What he can now do, and he actually does this now, he can actually record himself presenting that PowerPoint with a single button inside PowerPoint and send that video out to people. And people now don't have to guess what he was trying to say. He doesn't have to waste his time doing it again and again and again. I, as a user, I can watch it at 2x, save my time. I can search within the video because transcripts are available, and I can consume the relevant content faster. I am more productive. So that's the kind of story we're going for.
So I want to just tease that out, and this is, we usually save the tips for later, but you mentioned something very quickly in there. And by the way, I love hearing you say 2x because I do that. Videos I have to watch all the time. Can you talk a little to our users? Is something that they may not realize is a capability inside Stream?
Yeah, so in Stream, you can actually go to the cogs wheel in the player and say, I want to watch it at 2x the speed, 1.7x, 5x. And in fact, if you are coming from a different part of the world where you want to watch it slower, you can do that too.
Great scenario. I want to present a deck, and then I, of course, want to post along the deck so other people can use it. But the value of me as a user being able to record the thing and upload it in the system, pretty basic. But you also talked about then to share it, that he wants to send it to other people. I think that's where the real value is. You touched on Yammer. You touched on, obviously, live events for bigger things. And we should touch on Teams, the experience in Teams. Talk about it just from an end user perspective. I've created something and now I get to the point where I want to share it. Is that hard to do? Video is hard to share. I don't want to point people somewhere where it's out of context. Describe a little bit about some of the benefits of how I can share more broadly. Sure. And then maybe some of those engagement aspects, when you're in those zones.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the sense of kind of peer-to-peer knowledge sharing and not just top-down communicating is really starting to become popular among our customers. So we're seeing more and more people, as I said earlier, creating this video content. And so you mentioned Microsoft Teams. If you look at it like that, we go to Teams here at Microsoft when we want to connect with a group that we're working closely with, or usually a handful of people, but we're all tracking towards some kind of goal typically and working on something. So pulling video into that experience is really easy. I mean, it's adding a tab and all of your videos from Stream are just seamlessly pulled into that experience. And when you have that very specific video content within the context of all these other conversations you're having around it, it makes it a lot more impactful than if it was just a standalone video sitting somewhere.
Yeah. And one of those starts to the journey is, of course, close to Chris and I's heart. In SharePoint, you've got the Stream Web part. Can you tell us a little bit about how you guys think about having built the Stream Web part, where it is today, some of the scenarios it unlocks?
Yeah, and I think we're not doing something very fancy or unique here, right? We're just learning for what people are doing. So people don't hang out in video portals. They do hang out where they hang out, on websites, on Facebook, in their consumer lives. So corresponding, if you look at it, people at work do spend a considerable amount of time in SharePoint site. They do spend time in Teams, as we talked about earlier. Some of them spend time on Yammer. So it's basically we are taking video to those places. And when we do that, we wanted to offer compelling experiences. So very simple thing, I don't know how many people know this or not, but if there is an embedded video, you can actually click on the small zoom icon on the player, and you can do a deep search within the video in an embedded experience. So those are the kind of delights we want people to have, and just feel natural for them to consume video wherever they are.
So let's tease that out a little bit, because we all consume lots of videos. And if folks are at all like me, I find myself sometimes saying, I know I saw a video, I think it was from this conference, and somewhere halfway through, someone in Windows stood up and was talking about this. I think all of us in the room know what some of these capabilities are, but our listeners may not. What are some of the things that kind of the power of cloud intelligence lets us bring into the way that we process video and can redistribute it?
Yep. I know I'm going to say this on radio, but I will say it. I think human beings tend to be lazy. So my point being, when you upload a piece of video, we actually put a lot of strain on you. You now need to imagine and think about everything that people will use to search this video later and put everything as a keyword or in description and title. How many of us want to do that, even do that? So what we said is, don't worry about it. Put your video in there. We'll make our cloud AI to good use. We'll take the audio in the video, make it entirely searchable now. So I'll give you an example. Satya at one of the conferences talked about how Ford is using AI to design the new grills for their cars and HoloLens. So now if I'm looking for that video, how likely am I going to find a video with just the knowing that Ford was talked about? But now Satya said Ford. Cloud AI said Ford is equal to text Ford, and then made it, and Stream said, okay, I'll let you search on that. Now,
and when we search in it, it's not just, here's a 2-hour video that the word Ford is used in, but I can get
to exactly the point in the video where Ford was mentioned. And then we talked about deep search again. You can search for other references of Ford in the same video or other videos, and then you can just get to the content faster, just like that.
And so what if I was in that video, but I never said a word, but I knew that I ran across the stage and wanted to find where was that moment where you could see me?
Yeah. So I think one good, thanks for the lead. So we actually, so we actually do people timelines in videos now.
Yep.
So we don't know who the people are yet, but what we do is we exactly will mention this person appeared in a timeline view of where all they appeared in the video. So if I wanted to consume just you, I would recognize your picture there and just go to the timeline view and click on which parts of the video you are in.
So the feature to allow people to find me in videos, probably we can only market to my family, but obviously, there's lots of applications of that. I know that, full disclosure, when I'm producing a video, I'll take all of the raw material and upload it to Stream just because I might have a 3-hour snippet of stuff, and I'm like, where did that guy come out and say that thing? And that face recognition lets me jump right to, it was 2 hours and 15 minutes in.
Yes, and not only that, like if you want to then share with your team, you can just click on share, and you can share the exact time snippet in terms of like just everybody getting that link will start at that point of time.
I didn't realize that.
It's great. I mean, I think the corpus of capabilities just by having what in SharePoint terms is a huge set of metadata per each video. It's searchable. I think the other benefits, I'd love to hear your thoughts on when you think about accessibility of videos, true accessibility for, folks maybe that need to do more reading than listening. To have an auto-captioning mechanism for each video uploaded, and that it does pretty well, like it's speech-to-text as you would expect when you're watching a video. I thought one of the great, nice innovations you guys did is not only does it do the auto-captioning, but now if the machine didn't get it quite right, you can edit it right in line, which is, I bet, huge, because it used to be a little bit more cumbersome to do that. But from an end-user perspective, when somebody's engaging with the video, maybe just from when people realize that there's this much information about a video, what are some of those key benefits, that when you auto-transcribe and then you get that into, SharePoint, how's that beneficial to when somebody's actually engaging on the video?
So, I think the accessibility point's a great one. At Microsoft, obviously, we look at all of our products as we're building them, and we want to make sure that any audience is able to use them and engage with them just like the person sitting next to them. So I think that, every time you upload a video, you do have just automatically, you get those closed captions. You, again, can adjust speed for playback. And there's specific features that we have built in. So it unlocks this content for folks, but it also makes it just easy to access for everyone.
Another thing to that.
Yeah.
So continuing the automatic speech to text, we actually now also record if you have an option to record a meeting recording or a meeting in Teams, And imagine that is so helpful, right? So many of us attend some meeting just for the fear of missing out, FOMO, right? So now I don't have to. I can just go back, search for the text. Did the topic even come up? Quickly consume that as a recording and go about my day job. Like, that's an example of beyond accessibility of where it's very, very helpful and it saves you time and productivity.
So in the future, you also might be able to take that video, find out where someone was talking about the topic, edit myself in to say something relevant, and then reshare it.
Yes, you can do that, definitely. We can do lots of fancy things because we know a lot about meetings already.
Right.
We know when somebody started sharing their desktop. We know there's so many other signals we are not tapping into yet. But you can imagine. I'll let you imagine.
Well, maybe you can help us not imagine. Do you have a couple of details from the roadmap that you'd be comfortable chatting about here?
Yes, so I think we do publish a roadmap.
Yep.
So some of the things on that roadmap today are, I think Christina talked earlier about live events. So we are working toward GA of that, and that's going to be incredibly powerful. And we talked about participation from people. So we're going to work on some of those capabilities in our live events on how we get more people to participate in those events. Beyond that, one thing that I keep getting hammered by customers on is public anonymous sharing. I can say it's still there. It's going to come very soon. We're going to start working on that very soon. So that's another thing on the public roadmap already. We are actually working on a mobile app. So mobile app is going to power some really cool scenarios. So we're not thinking about mobile just as another screen, but truly thinking about mobile on-the-go experiences for our mobile app, like things like you can download videos and stuff. So that's going to come around the corner as well. And beyond that, I think there's just a ton of improvements, more integrations into Office we talked about. We are redesigning the web part in SharePoint to be more natural without the scroll bar that people love. So things like that.
So let's turn to how people can learn more. Obviously, there's a pretty active team, both on engineering and marketing side, that are putting out some great blogs. Where are some of the centers of gravity if people wanted to follow what's coming next for Stream?
Sure. So I think that the tech community is a great resource. So in our tech community, we are constantly monitoring the feeds there. We're looking through ideas that customers have submitted that they'd like added to the products. So that's a great place to go and really get in front of our marketing and product team directly. Social media handles, the Microsoft Stream Twitter handle, Office News Twitter handle is also a good one. And Vishal was talking a little bit about the roadmap. So the Office 365 public roadmap is a great page to bookmark if you ever want to see what we do have coming in the near future with Stream.
And are either of you on Twitter and you put out little secrets every once in a while? So if somebody followed at Vishal Sood,
Yes.
They're going to get little drip feeds of some goodness?
Obviously.
No pressure.
No pressure. But I think also, like, we attend a lot of events. So quite a lot of us are Ignite and other events that Microsoft hosts. So do stop by our booth on those events and just say hello. We'd love to know you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time today. We also do a segment towards the end of the show is frequently asked questions. And something tells me you get some questions once in a while about Stream or what's video this and how do we integrate with this and that other app. So hopefully you guys will stay and join us for FAQ, share your most frequently asked recent question and to get your answers. Thank you again for your time coming into the show today.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
Thank you for having us.
Beyond this podcast, sometimes you want to do some reading. There's a lot of articles out there that obviously talk about a lot of what Christina talked about, which is that use of video and how you can better engage your audience. I came across an article that was written by our general manager for Microsoft 365 in the collaboration space, Lori Wright, and the article is titled 4 Steps to Engage Employees with New Live Events in Microsoft 365. So we talked about that a little bit on how the Stream team is building for live events and obviously the experience in a lot of different places. But what is the value behind doing that? And really, I'll just kind of lift a quote from what Lori said. To thrive in the new culture of work, companies must drive alignment of your people around shared purpose and goals. Leaders realize that organizations who do this and do it well have an advantage in attracting and retaining an engaged workforce. So the 4 tips, I'll just outline them here and we'll put a link in the show notes so that you can go read the full article. It's a really great read. It sets the context of obviously why, and the outcome, which is the most important, is of course a more engaged workforce is one that feels more connected, is more productive, and there's a ton of value. The first part of the article talks about kickstarting the interactive discussion. Think about this video with Q&A, so you get that engagement part. Second part talks about fostering sustained dialogue in open communities. Think of this as a combination of Stream plus Yammer. Then it moves into creating an intranet site for leaders, really where a lot of corporate communications starts and stems from, is from executive communications. Think of this as SharePoint and Stream plus the ability to engage, and that's another use of Yammer. And then the last one is just pure planning and measuring impact. So if you have a way to have a team plan to build out their next speaking engagement or their next webinar, you can do that in Teams, and then you get all the insights really now from a lot of different areas, but think of likes, comments, view counts, and you get to see what that impact is. It's a great article, great way to think about what can I do, but it's mostly important that it really shares the outcomes.
Yeah, and I've seen Lori speak on this before. It's interesting to take that idea of a global culture of work, and how do you forge a microculture when no two people have the same combination of time zone or technology or people in SharePoint or Teams or mobile devices, definitely spread across different work styles. So I think that's really fantastic.
Yeah, and the part of the article, too, that's just a good takeaway, it's real quick, is It's for the end user. This is to empower not the group of 10 people that do corporate communications within a company. These are things that anybody can do. You have a message to get out. Here are some great ways to do it and some great things to think about how to do it effectively.
So my app of the week is a video tool called Microsoft Stream. But I really want to hone in on something very, very small in it, but it's a great productivity boon. One of the things that Stream does, as Vishal talked about, is it generates caption files automatically from the text that it hears. And the caption file itself is editable, and it gives it to you in Word format. One of the things that I've found is frequently, though, you want to get, when you have a fairly lengthy video, being able to take snippets out, and it's great to embed them as video, but sometimes people just want to see a paragraph of what someone said. And the fact that that's already there built for me, and I can just download that caption file into Word, grab the paragraph I want, paste it into a blog post or an email, or saying, hey, this is raw, this is hot, go take a look at it. Here's the quote you need to see.
And you can create a nice deep link that goes right to that part of the video.
Absolutely.
So read this, highlight something that you want to call out in the text, and then if they want to go hear it or listen to the whole video, they can certainly back it up from there.
Right.
It is now time to jump in the ocean, this ocean of productivity, this ocean of life, and we're going to be spending some time doing something we haven't yet done on this podcast, which is talk to a customer. And we're also going to be talking with a partner that's been working closely with this customer. And the customer with the ocean pun is Wavemaker. And Wavemaker is a global advertising giant in London, England, and certainly has offices all across the world. And we're going to talk to them for a little bit and learn about what they're doing with Office 365, learn a little bit more about their business and how that's supported, and get a viewpoint both from a Microsoft partner and a Microsoft customer. So today we're speaking with David Kaganowski, and David is a global chief technology officer at Wavemaker and partner of choice that they worked with. We're here talking today to Susie Dean, who is a CEO with our partner Add-in 365. Well, welcome to you both. Thank you very much for taking time and joining the Intrazone.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
We want to jump in and mostly first find a little bit about you. We've certainly got a little bit of information already out there on Wavemaker. We'll touch on that and then dive deep from your own perspectives. But really, just to kick it off, let's find out a little bit more about you. David, first, let's hear a little bit about what you do with Wavemaker and some of the things that make David David.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of pressure as a first question, but we'll see what we can get. So, David, as you mentioned, I am the global CTO for Wavemaker. Wavemaker is not just a media agency, but really we are an agency that focuses on bringing together content, technology, and media in order to help our clients better manage their investments in marketing and ultimately to meet their business goals. I've been in this business now for a year because it was a year ago that we brought together two other agencies to form this. Prior to that, I spent some time both with another one of our agencies as well as Group M, which is a parent company of ours. And before that, a lifetime, probably nearly 20 years in consulting, where I worked with almost every industry except for advertising. And so that's where I find myself today.
Very nice. Well, speaking of consulting, I don't know if that's the perfect segue to Susie, but Susie,
I think it is.
Certainly thinking of you as a partner working with a customer, probably often wearing a consultant hat, obviously with your CEO hat on as well. Tell us a little bit about Susie and the role of CEO at In365.
Okay, so at In365, specialize in Office 365. That's all we do. And we're really set up to help organizations to utilize those great out-of-the-box services that are available, especially SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams. And we do that with a products and, as you say, consulting services approach. And about me, I've been working with SharePoint since 2003. So we've seen the whole wave of SharePoint as a developer platform, the transformation in the market towards lots of intranet in a box type vendors, and now, a third wave where SharePoint comes beautifully ready, fully formed, and ready for customers to use.
I like it. So
Susie, you remember the interesting old days 15 years ago with 2003 when we realized, hey, we have to do an upgrade. We hadn't thought about that in 2001.
I remember my first project was actually working with a big bank in London, and we built one SharePoint 2003 portal after another. And every time they wanted a text change, they used to have to come back to our developers to do that. Ooh. And I spent all my time organizing text changes.
And in that switchover, obviously when you remember the past, usually it starts with, it used to be X, and it was, begrudging and kind of felt like pulling teeth sometimes. But in that evolution, sometimes people question, well, then what do you do? What is that value add? Is it hard to find that value on top of this now more out-of-box platform? What would you say to that?
I think that, first of all, we've picked an industry that moves incredibly fast. So for people that don't like that pace of change or who sort of want to be doing the same thing over and over again, this is not a sensible industry to work in. And certainly Office 365 is not the platform people like that should be working with. But for me, it's so exciting that SharePoint now comes with things like com sites and hub sites, and Teams is ready to go as it is, and OneDrive allows you to do all this co-author and share and version control ready to go, because it means we can help organizations to focus on the really cool stuff that adds to the bottom line of their businesses, the properly transformative projects. In the old days, everyone knows organizations would easily spend $500K developing an intranet, run out of budget. That would be it for 4 years, and you'd never really get into the business change element. Whereas today, we leapfrog straight into that, which is really where we picked up with Wavemaker.
I think that's great. Obviously, to snap to the value. But David, sorry, I cut you off.
I want to just add a little bit to that, because also sometimes we have these memories of the difficult times, whether it's migrating or upgrading or having to do the text changes through a ticket to IT. But we also have to remember each one of those evolutions brought us functionality we never had before. I mean, as difficult as it may seem compared to today, the ability to deploy an intranet and share information with your employees that's updated in a fairly real-time basis, and to be able to give them access to this information at their fingertips when they want it, not when we're ready to present it. That was quite a sea change. And so I think we see these evolutions, and I have no doubt that one day we will look back on 2018 and we'll say, boy, wasn't something really, really difficult back then. Yeah. And the difficulties are here. Maybe change management will be that much easier when we look back on it 10 years from now. But
I don't think
there's a lot of positive.
I don't think it's too much of a surprise that the root that migraine and migration share. But one of the big things that you've done, which is no small undertaking, let's just put aside the technology because we'll get there. But David, you mentioned that you've been bringing a couple of companies together, and obviously that merger also brought with it a parent company that sits above it. Can you speak a little bit to, MEC and Maxis and how that became now Wavemaker, and in bringing everybody on the same page, how that's been working for you?
So we brought together two world-class agencies into one, and it wasn't a merger for the purpose of synergies or for the sort of the what I would say would be traditional reasons why you would bring things together. But it was really to try to take advantage of of an opportunity to bring change, to really change the way that our clients see us, the way that we operate, to really modernize an agency, and to do so while we are able to also introduce new ways of working, new concepts. This idea of bringing together media, technology, and content is quite radical, and so we use the merger as the opportunity to do that. When we did that, though, that really means we are changing the way that people operate. We are changing the way that they need to start thinking about how they interact with each other. And that kind of change is not easy, especially when we have to do that while we're flying the plane, meaning while we're servicing our clients, and we can't drop everything. We can't simply stop and say, let's go change for the next year. 15 years ago, I remember there being an awful lot of focus in M&A about, what we need to do? We need to unify the login experience. And I hope that most companies, and I certainly know that Wavemaker does, has a nuanced approach to the importance of culture at helping formulate that integration. Could you kind of unpack for us a bit, how much is that cultural integration a part of your approach to the technology strategy? The cultural, let's just say this. Number one, we are very fortunate in the sense that by being with MEC and Maxis, having been part of Group M, essentially we'll call them sister agencies, we shared an underlying infrastructure. So some of that stuff we just didn't have to deal with, or it was there for us. So it made it easier. Sure, we had to change, email addresses and logins and all those sort of basic things, but not the underlying infrastructure. And therefore, it is all about the culture, because we're bringing together not just teams that need to service clients in a new way, but we've got to get them working together in a way that they aren't used to. In fact, these brands existed in order to keep them separate. It was deliberate that two agencies, or in our case, 4 agencies, existed within the Group M infrastructure, because by keeping them apart, we were able to deal with client conflicts and be able to work on very different clients. So keeping them different, keeping the cultures different, was actually a part of the value proposition. So bringing the cultures together is actually front and center, in addition to actually enabling them to do something that's unique and to bring something unique to the marketplace.
Terrific. So Susie, listening to this, when Ad 365, when you first heard from David and from Wavemaker, reflecting a little bit on kind of where portals and intranets have been and where you see them headed, like, what did you hear, and what, in hearing that, what was your first impression of what you wanted to tackle?
Well, I think the blessing in the situation was the time pressure. I think what we've seen a lot of in the market is that real resistance to getting started. And of course, with Office 365 updating more than once a day, the problem with going into that infinite loop of planning is nothing ever really moves. Nobody ever really evolves. Whereas Wavemaker were absolutely on, they were on the watch. That company was going live on January 1, and we had to be in a position to get that rollout underway and to show rapid progress. And so we were very, very pleased, because our Work Hub platform, which is a fully personalized dashboard that brings together Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive for the individual, went in very quickly. I think that took a couple of days. And that was it. Week 2, we were doing rollouts with different teams around the organization. And now, the Wavemaker team are about halfway through. So I think it was very pleasing that we were under that time pressure, because it enabled us to get started. And I think, as I said, where others perhaps go slightly wrong is they think they can, plan it to the point that it will just happen, and it doesn't work like that. I think Office 365 today demands a very active relationship with the business and the platform, rather than a passive one that's about configuration and setup and 10 pixels left and 5 pixels right. It's really not like that anymore.
The other thing that I've heard you both talk about is change management. And there's change management to move beyond those first couple days, to get started, to get people trained, to get people aware of what's new. But there's also the change management of, now we actually want to support not just information distribution, a portal of the past, But you've been talking about this personalized experience, moving the portal's job or the role and changing that and evolving that over time. And I want to hear first from Susie in terms of how you build Add-in 365 to accomplish that and maybe the reasons why you saw that as an opportunity.
Yeah. So why did we put together a personalized dashboard? Well, that was to simplify the Office 365 experience. One of the challenges with having to go via the app launcher to different services is that, if you want to search for something in Delve, you have to sort of go to the app launcher, find the Delve service. If you then want to go back into Teams, you do that. And so we wanted to bring everything into one experience. And the benefit of that is the out-of-the-box SharePoint followed sites is one of the capabilities we bring on that page. So it really is giving you your experience of the digital estate. But we dovetail that with having SharePoint content exposed within Teams, which is just the most brilliant thing, because it means the SharePoint content is created and maintained in one place, but it's exercised by the teams that are meant to use it. So we're no longer in that paradigm where we have a hierarchical intranet in one place, collaboration areas in another, and we're sort of asking employees to go between the two to do their work. No. Today, we're in Teams, we have that tab in Teams, and we're bringing that SharePoint content in, which is empowering people to use that traditional published intranet content while they work.
I think...
And we've seen very, very high levels of adoption with that.
I think you're hitting on something there. Office 365, at some of our not proudest moments, turns into a cottage industry for experts on what to use when. Some of whom are friends of the show, so I don't want to cast aspersions on that. But I do love that what you're finding is kind of the ability to get use and reuse and flexible experience styles, so you can take information that you've built from a page paradigm and move it into a chat paradigm, SharePoint and Teams.
It's great. And of course, that goes even further because we're able to add connectors and content from other applications into that Teams interface as well. So, I think if you put yourself in the shoes of the Wavemaker employee, there's 8,500 people's worth of content. You don't want to be wading through that to get your work done. And so we've created an environment in which everything feels very personalized. And of course, the last part of the jigsaw is the onboarding, which I'll let David talk about because he has some great perspectives on how this has gone.
Yeah, let's take a little time with that because, as they say, a picture paints 1,000 words. So let's take 1,000 words and the joy of describing on here, essentially on the radio, what might be better experience from a visual perspective. But David, can you talk a little bit about what does this overall Work Hub intranet look like, and what scenarios for users do you think you've been most successful at achieving?
Absolutely. Let me just one comment on the previous points that were made, though, is one of the other things that really helped us, and I just can't emphasize this enough to any of my peers who would be going down this journey, is that from the get-go, I focused my energy on really showing our management why. If I could have gone to our management and said, I want to move everyone into a cloud-powered collaboration and productivity environment, and I probably would have been asked politely to step aside while we do something maybe a little bit more interesting. We didn't do that.
Right.
We called it new ways of working, and I immediately focused on exactly the benefits to the business, not about the technology. I mean, there's plenty of technology in here, but we focused on that. Getting that buy-in absolutely allowed us to launch as quickly and as fast as we wanted to do, and frankly set the expectations that we're going to get some stuff done. And this is why we started moving very fast. We said we want to see results, we want to move, we want to get our people to feel something different. So I just wanted on the previous point. In terms of the look and feel, I'll tell you what I'll even begin with is we want our people to come into work each day, open up their screen, and their world opens up in front of them. That is a vision many of us have had for a long time. But I believe we're actually starting to achieve this. So rather than first thing opening up email, the Work Hub is open. by going to work.wmglobal.com. All of our people know it. We've developed, we've printed up stickers to put on their laptops to put there. Yep. So we really want, of course, though, I have thought about the fact that we don't have anything that says fun.wmglobal.com. So if anyone has any suggestions.
I think at least register that as a domain so that you have it. And then that's a big win next year.
That's right. That's a 2019 goal. But for the 2018, work.wmglobal.com gets them to the place. Within seconds, they immediately see what's happening in their calendar. They see the teams that they're a part of and what is happening. They can quickly get to the teams themselves. All of their followed SharePoint sites are there. We've integrated it with another app that we use that we call the Wave, which is where we send information through a news feed to our people. It's very one-directional type of communication. They've got access to an email button because we know that email is still a very large part of how they operate. And even something like simple as search is right there, exposed in the upper right-hand corner as you would expect it to be on most web properties today. What's interesting about that is you notice that in general we didn't talk about delve, for example. We don't expose that as a function. Now everyone certainly sees that when they execute a search, but they think of it as search. They think of email as email, schedules as schedules, and even OneDrive, we call it files, because that's we try to put it into that human paradigm as to how people think. And so that screen is in front of them. That's the beginning of their day. Everything else that they access throughout the day, we want them to access it there. Their team collaboration, other applications, anything else that they want to be able to use. But don't call it an intranet, by the way. We are very deliberate about that. And the reason for that is because this is not a curated place for content where people come and read things. There's value to those things. This is not it. This is really that's why the word work hub is so important. The word work hub is being ingrained in our vocabulary here because it's the place you go to get things done.
There's a conceptual thing here which the geeks that listen to this podcast, and I include myself in that, will recognize in what David described. And that's
by the way, and thank you for listening.
I love it. And that's the concept of outer and inner loop were really validated with this project. All of the Wavemaker content around their awards and cans and communications, their outer loop is there, but their inner loop is where they were working within teams using OneDrive. And so it was very interesting for us as well as the project sort of developed to see those concepts actually working very, very hard to deliver an experience that was very and is very tailored and suitable to the individual's needs.
So one of the things we wanted to unpack just a little bit, I actually have a graphic that is a part of the case study that we have published out on the internet. We'll put a link in the show notes. And within that, there is a graphic of the Wavemaker Work Hub homepage. And so I'm just going to describe it a little bit. And where I wanted to take it a little bit next from you both is when you sat down, you knew a lot of what Add-in 365 could offer. You knew a lot of where you wanted to change and provide this single pane of glass. You call it a one-stop shop work hub. But just to describe a little bit of what I'm seeing at the top, the App Launcher, Office 365 sites. Everything below that is Wavemaker. It's orange, it's gray. It brings in a lot of the applications. There's a weekly team meeting, something that really shows my calendar, probably pulling from my direct calendar through the API. And it has not only is here's your next meeting, but it says I might want to do an action like I'm running late. Can I get drinks for anyone? Lots of things that are very personal.
And it's incredibly personal. The one for me, I'm here, where is everyone?
Does that happen to you a lot, Chris?
It does.
But as you pan down the screen, it's a very easy to engage with, and like you said, personalized experience. I see my documents, I see favorite groups, which is not a most common thing. Usually there isn't like a app launcher for groups, which I think is a unique thing, to see a set of your groups, not within one of the apps, but at the parent level here. And on. If we point people to it, they'll see this is a really nice, what I would think of as a very dynamic experience for each of the Wavemaker employees when they sign in. But again, long story short, we tried to paint the picture of what this looks like. You certainly go and see it. And when we tweet this out, we'll make sure to include the screenshot because you've given us the okay to do that, which we love.
Right.
And I would add, it's a very simple one. I think that's something we really tried to balance very carefully.
My first question, it's a dangerous question. Does this load quickly for you as an experience for people? You have it as a first thing you want them to see at the beginning of the day. What's the performance like? Just first talk about that.
I think it's snappy. The truth is we've never really dealt with any performance issues. So I think it's snappy. It comes up quickly. And by the way, a lot of times it comes up and people almost immediately then exit out of it by clicking on their team and moving on to the teams. It isn't someplace where this screen isn't open necessarily all day long. It's a tab in a series of tabs. It's the starting point. But it's from here that they go into all the other resources that are available to them and then come back.
What's interesting about this is when you look at lots of these gateway pages that take people to where they need to get something done, you think they all look alike, but one of the things I analyze in this is there are some organizations that get very dominated by, say, corporate communications. And that's great, but say, I want 2/3 of the content to be corporate mandated and only 1/3 should be personalized. And the vast majority of your experience is personalized. I'd love to get your insights as to how you got to that mix.
I mean, from our standpoint, we had reimagined the intranet. I mean, this was even before engaging with Wavemaker. So the Work Hub is a product that Adin 365 sell. And what we wanted to move away from was this idea that the intranet is something that corporate comms own. They have to go around hitting people with a stick, getting them to update these pages that describe what departments and business areas do, which, by the way, is virtually useless to anyone in the business because they already know what they do. And we wanted to move much more towards the idea of intranet, and by intranet I mean reference material, because as David said, Work Hub is not an intranet, but we wanted to move much more towards an environment in which business areas create their own know-how, their own reference material that is surfaced into teams, and therefore the intranet is no longer this top layer, this front door, but actually it's this thing that seeps up from below. It's within these collaboration environments. It's much gnarlier. It's not beautifully curated. It's hardworking content that business areas create that describe their processes, how they work, so that as people come and go from those teams, that knowledge, that information is there. It's centralized. In other words, the organization's IP and know-how is the intranet rather than this sort of comms experience that I think historically it has been.
I wanted to transition just a hair with what Susie was saying, which I think kind of blends maybe a little summary before we move into actually beyond the Work Hub, because we'd love to hear a little bit more. You've mentioned OneDrive and Microsoft Teams, and in conjunction with Work Hub. But David, I'm going to lift a quote that you said that's in the case study again that we'll link to. We cannot continue to deliver work in old ways and sustain our profits, our margins, and the quality of work we deliver to customers. We have to change, and we're using Microsoft solutions to do that. We spent a lot of time talking about the Work Hub, but in this face of change, you've also mentioned OneDrive and, of course, that integrated connection with how you're leveraging Microsoft Teams. Can you just spend a little time talking a little bit about how you're using OneDrive, the benefits there, and Microsoft Teams? And actually, I'm layering in one last thing that we didn't, that Susie brought up, which is that inner loop and outer loop. And OneDrive and Microsoft Teams are very inner loop. So we've been talking about the outer loop with Work Hub. I'd love to hear more about how you're leveraging and working in your inner loop.
Yeah, let's start with OneDrive. It really is. It began, and by the way, the way that we really sold people on moving away from their old ways of working, which is keeping stuff on their laptops, keeping content in file servers, which are highly restricted in terms of being able to add people. You have to always call IT, all these little nuances when it comes to file servers. We wanted to move things out of there and into OneDrive because we want to democratize some of the information. We want to add resiliency to that information, and we want to free people to be agile. None of those things were possible with the old ways of working. And so when we talk about that, when we talk about retaining a modern workforce, that's a workforce that isn't going to come in and necessarily work from their cubicles. Sometimes they do, but we'd like them to be able to work in a far more agile way. We have to have this as a foundation, and OneDrive is the most fundamental of those foundations. Second of all, I think that we discovered a long time ago that one of the most thankless jobs, especially when it comes to pitching work and pitching new business to our clients, is that job of having to unify 14 versions of one PowerPoint, and usually fell on people who were frankly uninspired by that kind of work. Today, nobody does that. We share a link, and everyone works on things collaboratively. That fundamental change certainly wasn't possible until we would move into the OneDrive environment. And then when it comes to and I'm going to add one more thing. One more thing here is that it frees people from their laptops. The freedom that most people have experienced from their laptops is really pretty interesting. We have mobile devices in our hands, in the palm of our hands, that allow us to access content, to be able to edit it to some degree. Look, no one's creating large, complex PowerPoints necessarily just on their mobile device, but they can certainly edit out a piece of text that needs to be edited out, and do so without having to resend a copy of that PowerPoint. And it frees them from having to be locked down to a particular location. They can do this anywhere. You could do this from 35,000 feet over in-flight Wi-Fi. You could do it from a cafe. You can do it from the beach. You could do it from your office.
And just
really fundamental.
Hearing you say that, you are the modern employer in the sense that you're okay with people working not just off hours, but in different locations, in different ways, and just getting work done. It's not 9 to 5, come into the building, log into your intranet. It's get work done in the ways that you need to, and certainly the tools support that.
I think it mimics the culture of our employees and of what top talent really demands of their employers. I think it mimics the culture of our clients who demand that we work in cycles that match to how they work. It's and by the way, there's a practical element to it. We have more employees than we have seats in our building sometimes, depending on if we've got a new client or not. And so it's important for us to be agile just for that reason alone. So if all of those reasons can be met, then we become the employer of choice. We become the agency of choice to our clients. And it keeps people happier. Certainly keeps me happier if I can do some of my work from the beach.
We want you happy. So we're glad that at least we're being part of that foundation of your happiness that you're passing on to your employees, which is awesome.
Absolutely. Let me maybe spend 2 minutes on Teams, because I would say that it's just amazing what it's done for how our people operate.
Please.
And the best example of somebody gave me of why moving to Teams was hard. And I said, wow. I don't know if I wanted to hear how hard it is. I want to hear how easy it is. But actually he said, no, it was hard. It was hard. It was sort of hard the way it was moving from a mobile device that had a home button to one that doesn't have a home button. They said that at first it was hard, and within a few days we couldn't imagine life without it. And that really is all about being able to collaborate over a piece of content in an asynchronous way, to be able to receive communication when you want to receive communication and turn it off when you don't want to turn it off. And not that we're eliminating email. Again, I don't have any kind of a misconception about that. But we're trying to take as much communication about specific content creation out of email and put it in a place where it's preserved, it lives, it can be referenced, and other people can see it.
So let's turn to the future. If you're getting comfortable with the present, which maybe is never possible in this changing world, what's in the future? You're beyond merger. Maybe there's another acquisition. Maybe there's a ton more clients that are now coming, specializing in just connecting with your employees all over the world. First to David and then Susie, what's next for Wavemaker?
Well, I think we're laying a foundation, which means that everything that we see, everything we've done today, I hope in 2 years we'll look back on and say, wow, that was pretty basic stuff. The really advanced stuff came after. What's the advanced stuff? I think it's using the advanced application, the additional applications available through the Office 365 environment. I think it's connecting more of our tools and data sources into this ecosystem so that we are accessing those tools directly from the Teams interface. We can do that today, but now we've really got more richness and integrating those tools so that anything that is created by those tools, we have a lot of tools that will let's say, take data, crunch it, and actually produce a deliverable, an object. And that object can then easily be placed in an automated way right into a SharePoint site tied to Teams. So we see this as just the beginning. We see much more sophisticated things. And really the limitation is not the technology. For us, the limitation is the ability for our people to absorb the change and to learn it all while working very hard and long hours to service our clients.
Susie, what do you see coming up for you guys?
We've developed and we are developing a number of applications which leverage bot framework, artificial intelligence, to support the employee use of the Office 365 services. So that's the direction we're going in. We see it really as, the basics of the technologies are now there within the platform natively. So it's about really supporting the employee use of that technology.
So you said you're getting into the bots. I now have to qualify. Are we talking to Susie Bot or real Susie?
Susie Bot. Real Susie. Real Susie's in front of the TV.
I love it. You're doing 10 things now. You got your bots all over.
I don't think the Turing test directly contemplated a podcast, but it could with voice.
I would say just one thing that I've observed looking at a lot of the bots that have been released into the marketplace. If you look at the ROI on an HR bot, for example, that you can book your holiday through, on the basis that most employees only book a couple of holidays a year, is the ROI on that really there? I don't think so. We've, as an organisation, started looking much more at what are the things people are doing every single day or several times a day. Because I think if you can automate and leverage the bot framework to enable and empower and speed up those activities, you'll really enhance the overall performance of an organisation. I actually think a lot of the stuff that's done with bots that I've seen is quite lazy. It's a sort of intranet function by another technology, which for me is really not where that tool can be deployed to have the most impact.
Susie, where can people go to learn more about Add-in 365?
Follow us on Twitter at Add-in365 and our website, addin365.com.
We'll put all those links in the show notes. Anything, David, active on Twitter, LinkedIn, anything certainly about Wavemaker and other parts of the company we can call out as far as people should pay attention to? Well,
absolutely. And, certainly encourage everyone to follow us at Wavemaker Global on Twitter and on LinkedIn. I think we've got, and for those interested in the industry, really great content coming out of those sources to learn more about what we're doing.
Awesome. Well, we certainly appreciate your time today, sharing a lot of the inner loop, outer loop, talking about change management, talking about employee empowerment, and certainly you've personalized this podcast a ton, just like WorkHub. So thank you for your time, and hopefully you'll stick with us for the end of the show when we do FAQs.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
It is now time to jump into frequently asked questions, and we love questions. That's part of our role. I think all of us, whether it's engineering or marketing, we get a ton of questions in all different types of venues, and now it's time to share. We'll start with Christina. What is the most frequently asked question you get, and certainly what you tell them? What do you say?
I would say that a lot of people, we know that they are adopting a lot of video in organizations. So naturally, the next question they have is, okay, now that I have this video, how do I get eyeballs on it? How do I get people to actually watch it? And something that we usually advise is, don't necessarily use video as an ad hoc way to communicate. If you're truly going to invest in video, make it part of your strategy. And then in addition to that, make sure that you're incorporating that not just as part of your strategy, but in the tools that you're using every day. So if you're spending time in Yammer and Teams and SharePoint, if that's where your employees are going, that's where your videos should also be.
Excellent. And I think the nice thing is it's all possible. It's not a Herculean effort to put your video in the right place for your audience. Mm-hmm. Just do it. Add a web part. Post as a video, as a tab in Teams or a whole channel. There's a lot of ease of use that they've built into the product. Thank you, Vishal. Mm-hmm. And, you do a nice job of showcasing how to do it.
Vishal, what's a question you've been hearing lately?
I get a lot of questions around why do you guys have two services, Office 365 Video and Stream? And now that people have realized we are going to move people from Office Video to Stream, the obvious question they ask is, when is that going to happen? Mm-hmm. So what I tell them is migrations are super easy. and put a big knot at the end of it. So we have been working really hard to build the migration engine. And recently we have started migrating some of our customers over. And depending on how well that goes, we're going to roll it out broadly, but we are on it. So we are going to be migrating customers, and we took on the work to make sure we do all the heavy lifting for them so that they don't have to do it. So it's just taking us more time there, but we're on it.
So if a user is using Office 365 Video and they start to dabble with Stream, that's totally supported?
That's totally fine. You can use both of them. Yep.
If I totally commit to Stream and some other, before the service is really committed to switching over to Stream and I've done X or Y in video, those won't be lost. Those would be moved to Stream before the service is completely converted?
Yes. So we will be moving all your content over, the permissions over. We'll be retaining any links that you have shared already or any videos you've embedded. They'll just be swapped into the Stream videos, and you'll get all the goodness with that. So
that's great.
That is great.
One question, Mark, I've been getting a lot lately has only a little bit to do with video, but when we think about the pages we have in SharePoint, we've made it easier to build and to enrich them and to be able to bring things in like Stream and to extend them into Teams and all sorts of other places. But I've had 3 people in the last 2 weeks ask about how do I get better control and structure around the design of those pages as well as controlling when they go out. And so there's just 2 answers I have to that. First and foremost is if you look at SharePoint News and if you use the news page, there's the copy of this post. So if you've already structured one news page that you think conveys the structure that you'd want to use. We use this a lot in my teams with meetings where there'll be one section for the video, one section for the presentation, and one section for the notes. Creating a new copy from that makes sure that there's consistency. The other thing that we are right now in targeted release on is page approvals. So being able to use Flow to let anyone author a page, but only a limited number of folks using Flow to receive notice that it's out there and to control when that page actually gets published.
That's awesome. Well, mine is sort of in the same realm in terms of page management. And I'm going to promise one thing. I'm going to give the FAQ right now so you get the audio version. But I'm also going to go back to my office and record my answer in video, in Stream, and then I will post that to the SharePoint group that's in Yammer so that we can get that broadly across. So for anybody in the field that's asked this question. So the FAQ that I've gotten really revolves around page metadata management. So the most common question I get now that we've started to release this feature is, does this actually work with managed metadata? And the answer is yes. The inline edit panel will allow you, if you have managed metadata columns, that you can type in and choose from those term sets. And it also is reflected in the page properties web part as well. So for anybody that cares and loves about metadata, it's not only the things that you type into the fields that we make available to you for the end user, but if you're managing it through the term store, that plumbs through. You can pick those fields. You can change them inline in the editor. And then those are reflected on the page as well with the new page properties tool.
That's cool.
Yeah. So
That's
let's
great.
turn to our last 2 FAQs. Kind of interesting for our podcast. These are actually coming from a partner, which is pretty common, but also from a customer. Susie, you get probably tons of questions from clients, from peers, from across the board. Love to hear, what is your most frequently asked question? And certainly, what do you say once you get the question?
Yeah, the most frequently asked question is, how do we make this successful? And we always, how do we make sure we get the high levels of adoption with our rollout of SharePoint, OneDrive and Teams? And we always give the same 3 answers. Number 1, get started. Don't sit in a dark room planning, because you learn by doing. Secondly, don't roll out service by service. So, let's roll out OneDrive to everyone. Let's roll out Teams to everyone. Decide which tasks you want to help people complete, and then use the right bits of Office 365 to help people complete that task. Most people will work across services, not vertically with services. And the third thing I always say is that customers have to own their own success. Wavemaker are responsible for their global rollout, not add in 365. We've provided the methodology. We've done a number of rollouts with the Wavemaker team, but they have global regional leads spearheading that. And that means it's change from within rather than change from an external party. And I think that's a really big part of why they've been so successful.
And David, your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to share one of your most frequently asked questions with us.
Well, I'm going to go a little bit different, and I'll say the most frequently asked question for me has been, what should I do to ensure a successful career? And I'll tell you the answer I give people. I think of careers and of our work environment is like surfing. You've got to prepare. You've got to be physically fit. You got to be mentally fit. You have to understand what you're doing, and you have to have a board, the equipment. But guess what? No matter what happens, no surfing occurs until that wave comes. So what's most important sometimes is not just to be prepared, but to keep your eye out for the wave and catch the wave at the right time.
I'm really happy to hear you say that, not least of which I spent the afternoon paddle surfing around Puget Sound yesterday. So welcome to the events section of the Intrazone. There's a lot going on. If you are listening to this right at this magic moment, you may notice I am also simultaneously on stage delivering a workshop on enterprise business applications at SharePoint Fest Seattle.
I love it. Shipping today, Quantum Chris, Schrodinger's presentation. SharePoint Fest Seattle, August 20th to 24th. We'll include the link to that in the show notes. Hope you can come on down if you're in the area. Next week, a good number of us will also be on the East Coast, my old digs, at SharePoint TechCon, hosted in Boston. Lots of MVPs and community speakers from around the world. Obviously, Ignite 2018 is coming up in September 2018 in Orlando, Florida, USA. It is the single largest Microsoft tech-focused event for our customers and implementers around the world. There'll be a large group of folks from the SharePoint and OneDrive teams, an even larger number coming from across all Microsoft to cover all technologies under the sun, whether they're coming from Microsoft 365, Azure, Dynamics, everything will be represented there. Plus, across the expo floor, there will be hundreds of our partners there who you can learn from, as well as our MVPs who understand Microsoft but can bring a more balanced and nuanced approach to understanding the best way to take what we've done and integrate it with technologies you may already have or that you're building on your own. So beyond some of the big ones, obviously there's the recurring events with the SharePoint Saturdays. If you go to spsevents.org, there is an event probably in your neighborhood coming up. The next few SPSs will be in Bogota, Colombia, Stockholm, Sweden, and Cambridge, UK. These are free events, and they are a great way to just plug in. A lot of great speakers always fly into these different events. They're really well managed, very easy to get in and out of, stay the full day, ask tons of questions, see a lot of great content. Don't forget about SPS. Thank you to our guests, Vishal Sood and Christina Torek from Microsoft Stream, as well as David Kaganovsky from Wavemaker and Susie Dean from Add-in 365.
We encourage you to send us your question for the SharePoint teams. You can reach us via email at theintrazone@microsoft.com or via Twitter @mcashman and @cmcnulty2000.
You'll be able to find all the links to everything that we discussed today in our show notes on the podcast page. Go to aka.ms/theintrazone. Thanks so much for listening. We're your hosts, Mark Cashman and Chris McNulty. This has been The Intrazone, a show about the SharePoint Intelligent Intranet.
Okay, it's official. We are very much in the final sprint to Election Day. And face it, between debates, polling releases, even court appearances, it can feel exhausting, even impossible to keep up with. I'm Brad Milkey. I'm the host of Start Here, the daily podcast from ABC News. And every morning, my team and I get you caught up on the day's news in a quick, straightforward way that's easy to understand, with just enough context so you can listen, get it, and go on with your day. So, kickstart your morning. Start smart with Start Here and ABC News, because staying informed shouldn't feel overwhelming.